Be'ezrat Hashem, Naaseh v'Natzliach. I want to welcome you to another session of our in-depth learning of IGERET TESHUVAH from the Tanya. We're up to the third lesson, Baruch Hashem. We are going to do a quick review of the last two lessons, which will help us to get into today's lesson. In the past two lessons, we only learned 2 lines. Today, we'll learn 2 more lines. You have to know that the learning over here is very deep, and there's 2 ways to do it. We can read, we can make believe that we understand, and we'll go through pages, or we go very, very, very slow. We dissect, we open up all these very deep concepts, and really understand what's going on. Because what's happening here is that we're all novices. Everybody here is new to this. I don't see any Chabadnikim in the room, right? So nobody's really a Tanya expert. So there's a lot of terminology, there's a lot of references, and if we don't go there and lay out the foundation to it, then it's going to be one of those lessons that I'm going to say a word over here and a word over there. You're not going to know what it means, but it's exactly the core of the lesson. So I took my time this week to find out about a few other things, and the core of tonight's lesson is understanding the 248. We'll get to that in a second, but just so you can understand, this is a very slow learning. It's different from what we're doing in our other classes. It's not so much inspirational, it's not so much about emunah, it's not so much about learning the Torah portion of the week. Those are exciting classes. This is cerebral. This is about this is learning. Okay? You're really going to get to learn how the mechanics of the heavens, how it works upstairs, right? We're looking behind the scenes and we're trying to understand it. It's 2 different types of approaches, 2 different types of learnings. And there's no other way to do this type of learning but like that. And that's how you're really going to understand it. And once you understand it properly, then you're really going to reap the fruits that we want to get. We want to understand this. And this is a real proper learning, proper understanding that I believe by the time we get through a few of these pages, we'll be not only on a certain frequency of understanding of how we need to deal with ourselves on a daily basis, but we'll be primed for the Teshuvah season come Elul and Rosh Hashanah. And let me tell you something. I thought that somebody who prepares for Judgment Day, starting from Tammuz or Av or Elul, that's the pro level. I was wrong. It is a pro level to a certain extent, but when you're learning IGERET TESHUVAH, you see it's a daily process. Pro level is daily teshuvah. So let's get started with our learning. We did say that in the past few weeks, first of all, one honorable mention. Believe it or not, this class has a sponsor. We have our first sponsor, our good friend Yehudit Ben Shabbat. Always on the side of the giving. They should always have all this Torah learning, all this effort that you're doing to learn, to spread the Torah, to promote Torah, to elevate others in Torah. May Hashem elevate you. And you should always hear good things, and looking forward to the next Rosh Chodesh class in your home. So, we very broad strokes, just to catch everybody up, we're talking about the Teshuvah process. The Teshuvah process has 2 levels to it. We called it Teshuvah del Ela, Teshuvah del Tata. Teshuvah del Tata is the lower level Teshuvah. The lower level Teshuvah where we are working on the 248 positive commandments and the 365 negative commandments, and we go back and forth and trying to understand what's the ramifications of each mitzvah and its reward, its damages, so on and so forth. And we're starting to do a teshuvah process called Teshuvah del Tata, a lower level. Apparently, the Rav says that after a few years, you're going to get so good at doing Teshuvah del Tata that you need to graduate to a higher level. And that's called Teshuvah del Ela. Teshuvah del Ela is when you're already partaking in a Teshuvah process where you're working on returning your soul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way He gave it to you on day one. Could you imagine showing up to the Shamayim and saying, Hashem, just like you gave it to me, I'm returning it back to you. It's a lofty, lofty goal, and I don't know too many people that even think about this as a life goal, even though that's we achieve to be tzaddikim and tzaddikot, and we want to do mitzvot, and we want to do chasadim, and all these things. But who wakes up in the morning and says, I want to give my soul back to God the way that He gave it to me? That's Teshuvah del Ela. We'll get there. Right now, before we can get to Teshuvah del Ela, we have to start with Teshuvah del Tata. Now that we're in this entry-level Teshuvah, which is the beginning Teshuvah on 248 positive commandments, and the Teshuvah on 365 negative commandments, you have to become a little bit better at recognizing what's a mitzvah taseh, what's a mitzvah lo taseh. I mean, we're going to say these two words so much in the next few lessons. How do you know which is which? What's a mitzvah taseh and what's a mitzvah lo taseh? So it's not so simple. It's two categories and they're very big, right? 248 and 365. It's not easy. However, if you just want to, we'll take the 10 Commandments, right? Lo tignov, lo tirtzach, lo tachmod, right? Those are negative commandments. Don't kill, don't rob, don't covet, right? It's a negative commandment. Usually, a negative commandment starts with lo, right? Don't do it. Ta'aseh is shmirat Shabbat, tefillin. Over there, we're commanded to keep the Sabbath. We're commanded to don tefillin. There's a book called Sefer HaChinuch, where it has all the mitzvot, and it divides it between aseh and lo taseh. If you want to go through the weekly Torah portion, and as you go through the weekly Torah portion, it shows you all the mitzvot aseh and lo taseh of that week. That's a nice way of learning it as you go through. There's also children's books, 613 children's book in Chabad. It's called Yadus 1, 2, 3. There's 3 versions to it where they take each mitzvah and they say it's aseh, lo ta'aseh, is it malkut, is it karet, is it it comes with all the punishments that it comes with it. Does it apply to men? Does it apply to women? Does it apply only in Eretz Yisrael? Does it apply in the entire world? Does it apply when Beit HaMikdash is around, when it's not around? There's actual books that detail mitzvot aseh and mitzvot lo ta'aseh. And then there's books that are sort of an abridged version of the entire 613. They just tell you, hey, you know what? Maybe you don't need to know everything about Beit HaMikdash at the moment. And there's maybe just a few things that you need to know, that since you live in the diaspora, you don't need to know about all the things that pertain to the agricultural laws of living in Israel. So you trim, you get down to a smaller one. It's sometimes a lot easier. Or if you're really serious about it, you might want to sit down and say, what do I do every day? I want to know what is under the category of aseh or lo ta'aseh. Is praying in the morning aseh or lo ta'aseh? Is me eating kosher aseh or lo ta'aseh? Is me giving tzedakah, or it's interesting, tzedakah is not a mitzvah. It's not actually a mitzvah, it's an act of kindness, but it's not a mitzvah. But you go through your daily regimen, and you say, okay, this is what I do every day. Which one of these is under the category of aseh? Which one is under the category of lo ta'aseh? Why? Because I can give different attention to it. I can give different attention to the positive and different attention to the negative. Why? Because we learned that in the heavens, they give it different attention. There's a different way that they process mitzvot when they're positive and when they're negative. And that's going to be the focus of this entire class. How do they deal with 248 in the heavens. I'm splitting it up. There's going to be a sprinkling of what they do with 365. But tonight, we're going to learn about the 248. The 248 mitzvot aseh. What is their power in comparison to the negative ones? How they dealt with in the Shammai? And eventually, we want to understand some deeper Kabbalistic concepts, because Tanya is Hasidut. Hasidut draws from the Zohar a lot to understand the mechanics of Teshuvah through 248 and 365 in the Shammai. You should know that the process of Teshuvah, rectification, is different and possibly longer depending on the transgression, depending on which mitzvah you transgressed on. For example, the first line of IGERET TESHUVAH, it says, Tanya, Besof Yoma, Shlosha Chilukei Kapara Hem, V'Teshuvah Im Kol Echad. The opening line to IGERET TESHUVAH says that in the end of Yoma, in the end of Masechet Yoma, it's a Gemara, it talks about 3 rectification processes, and every single one of these rectification processes is accompanied by a Teshuvah process. Meaning, if you want to atone, to do kapara, there are 3 ways of doing it, and with each one, there's a Teshuvah process that goes along with it. So it's kapara plus Teshuvah, kapara plus Teshuvah, and kapara plus Teshuvah. Now, these 3 kaparot, we spoke about it. I'm going to summarize it. We did go into depth in the last shiur, but I'll just summarize it so we have it as a reference for the rest of the class. We said, when a person wants to do a kapara, when transgressing a mitzvah aseh, so what does he have to do? He has to do a kapara and teshuvah, meaning it's a positive commandment, and the person does immediate teshuvah, and in Masechet Yoma, it explains to us that he gets immediate forgiveness. First rule, a positive commandment that you transgressed. The minute you do teshuvah, you get immediate forgiveness. That's level 1. Level 2, mitzvot lo ta'aseh v'shav. When a person transgresses on a negative commandment and he wants to do a teshuvah, so what happens? When he does the teshuvah process, he delays the punishment, and he has to wait till Yom Kippur comes and atones for the sin. A negative commandment, when you do teshuvah, your teshuvah yields this result. It delays your punishment, and it gives you the opportunity to get all the way to Yom Kippur, and on Yom Kippur, the day atones. The third level of transgression is when somebody gets to the level of karet. Karet is spiritual excommunication. When a person transgresses on something as karet, which I'll just give a quick example, which is somebody who doesn't keep Shabbat, and he wants to do teshuvah, well, he has to do the teshuvah process, and the teshuvah process delays the punishment. He has to suffer afflictions, and I'm sorry, 1 second. And when it comes to karet, the teshuvah process delays the punishment to Yom Kippur, and afflictions make the sin go away. Before I go to the last one, mitzvah aseh, immediate, when you do teshuvah, immediate forgiveness. Mitzvah lo ta'aseh, you do teshuvah, it delays the punishment, and Yom Kippur atones. When you get to karet, you do teshuvah, it delays the punishment, Yom Kippur atones, but you also have to go through afflictions. Last one is the worst one of all, is when somebody does Hilul Hashem. right? When he desecrates the name of God. And the Chilul Hashem, again, I don't want to go too much into it. In the previous class we did, is when a person makes something that disgraces the Jewish people, disgraces God as a Jew. If you cause that, then there's a certain teshuvah process for it, but there's 4 levels of rectification. Chilul Hashem is also somebody who sins and makes other people sin. That's also a Chilul Hashem. So over here, when somebody gets to Chilul Hashem, teshuvah does not delay the punishment. Yom Kippur does not atone. Afflictions don't help. All 3 combined just delay the punishment, meaning he has to go through all those things, but they only delay the punishment. Eventually he's going to get it, and only death atones Chilul Hashem. On the day that he dies is when that sin of Chilul Hashem is finally forgiven. So that's what Masechet Yoma was speaking about. That Gemara was talking about that. Now, we just mentioned that Teshuvah mitzvot aseh is immediate, and is considered also a Teshuvah Shelema. It's a complete rectification. Again, let's go back. There's 248 positive commandments. When you transgress on one of those, you do a Teshuvah, you're forgiven immediately, and above and beyond being forgiven immediately, the Teshuvah is considered Teshuvah Shelema, a complete Teshuvah, which is very, very hard to achieve, because we know that a complete teshuvah is, just like we said, there's many things that we want: a complete geula, a complete refuah, a complete geula, teshuvah. But apparently, it's like low-hanging fruit. It's very much achievable when somebody does the proper teshuvah process on the 248 positive commandments. The transgressions on mitzvot lo ta'aseh, it's a lengthier process, because why? Teshuvah is only 50% of the job, and Yom Kippur is the other 50%. And we also learned in our previous class that when somebody transgresses on a mitzvah lo ta'aseh, it's more serious, it's more damaging, because when you sin with the lo ta'aseh, it damages the soul, it hurts the godly source above. So up to this point, with just the learning that we did, one might think that mitzvot lo ta'aseh are stronger and more powerful than mitzvot aseh, strictly because the teshuvah process is lengthier. So you know what? Mitzvot lo ta'aseh, they're way stronger, they're way more important than mitzvot aseh. And we would deduce that because the higher level damage, the higher level negative impact on the soul, the lengthier teshuvah process, because of all those things, we think, mitzvot lo ta'aseh, those are the strongest ones, those are the most powerful ones you want to stay away from. But in reality, it's something different. And now we're starting tonight's class. Everything that we just mentioned was just a catch-up. This is all new material starting now. First line of Tanya. דאף על גב לעניין קיום מצוות עשה גדולה שדוחה את לא תעשה, Baal Tanya says, when it comes to the performance of positive commandments, they're stronger than mitzvot lo ta'aseh. So for here we need an example, because we're not going to understand these concepts when we just keep throwing mitzvot lo ta'aseh. At one point your mind's going to turn to mush hearing these concepts over and over again. So give me an example to understand. So he gave a beautiful example over here. We have a negative commandment that a person can't cut off from his body the leprosy. When somebody contacted leprosy, it's like a skin condition, he can go in with a knife, cut it off. You're not allowed to do that. That's a negative commandment. That's a mitzvot lo ta'aseh. Because there's a pasuk that says, Hishamer benegat sarat. That you're not allowed to remove from yourself signs of leprosy. Because those signs of leprosy you have to go show the Kohen. He's the one that's going to heal you. But let me give you a scenario. What happens if a baby boy that now needs to have his Brit Milah at 8 days, but the boy has leprosy? So we have a mitzvah ta'aseh for circumcision. We have Brit Milah is a mitzvah ta'aseh. Ripping off the leprosy off his skin is a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. Okay? We have a standoff. Who wins? Who's stronger? Right now we got to the nitty gritty. Which is stronger? I have a mitzvah lo ta'aseh and a mitzvah ta'aseh. Which one is going to win? Because this will prove to me which one is stronger. Because just from our previous learning, it seemed to us that lo ta'aseh is stronger because the lengthier teshuvah process. So tonight we're going to learn that no, mitzvah ta'aseh is actually stronger than lo ta'aseh, but I'm going to retract my words. It's the wrong term. It's not about being stronger. It's different. It's different. These classes are not going to be long. These classes are going to be short because we have to give very little information and to digest. We can't go on reading Tanya for 2-3 hours. I'm telling you, we have to take very, very small steps to understand where we're going. We have a standoff right now between circumcision and removing atzarat. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat on 133rd page on the first side says, Yavo aseh v'yitheta lo ta'aseh. The Gemara says, no, a positive commandment pushes off a negative commandment. Harei lanu sha'aseh chazak yoter ma'lo ta'aseh. Oh, that's it. We proved it, that the mitzvah ta'aseh is stronger of the lo ta'aseh. It says, Im ken, בביטול מצוות עשה, יש כוח בתשובה לבדל לכפר. מצוות לא תעשה, הפגם הוא יותר חמור. ומלבד תשובה, יום קידושין לכפר. He says what we just said before. He says, but wait, you know, you're telling me that mitzvah ta'aseh trumps the lo ta'aseh, but the teshuvah process proves it differently. So the Baal Tanya comes and gives us the answer. And this is the second line of the Tanya that we're going to learn tonight. Hainu, משום שעל ידי קיום מצוות עשה ממשיך אור ושפע בעולמות עליונים מהארת אור אין סוף ברוך הוא. Baal Tanya says, you know why the positive commandments are stronger than the negative commandments? Because when a person performs a positive commandment, he's able to draw light, spiritual light. Well, I don't want to have this generic term called light, because we imagine it's like, you know, like FPL is light. No, we're going to talk about what the spiritual light is. When I say light, you understand what it means. In just a few minutes, we'll get to it. But and that's what I'm saying. You know, if we read this and we say, oh, the Baal Tanya said, oh, light. Okay, well, fine. He says, oh, so all our entire life would say light, 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 spiritual light, spiritual light. But what is it? What is the spiritual light? What does it do? Where is it? Where does it come from? What's its purpose? What's its power? Why do I want it? Right? We have to find out what this light is. So, again, by performing the 248 positive commandments, you're able to draw light and abundance from the upper worlds, Meharat Or En Sof Baruch Hu, from this place called En Sof. Another word, En Sof, never ending, or in a minute we'll see different words that we're giving to it. So, by performing positive commandments, I'm able to draw this light and spiritual abundance from this place called En Sof. Are you ready to move to the next line? I'm not. I don't understand nothing. I don't understand anything. What is this light? What is this En Sof? What am I drawing in? What am I looking for? Why do I want this? So I stopped right here, and we got to start like dissecting things before we move forward. So mitzvah taseh, the mitzvah taseh that a person performs, the action and reaction. Action, I perform the mitzvah. Reaction, I am drawing this this light from this place called Ein Sof that resides in the upper worlds into the nefesh elokit, into my godly soul. Still don't understand anything. But that's what's happening. That's what's happening when we're performing a mitzvah aseh. We draw light, spiritual abundance from this high source in the heavens called Ein Sof. What is Ein Sof? So, loosely translated in English, it's unending. Ein Sof, unending source of light, right? There's no end, like infinity, the way the Arizal explains it also. But Ein Sof in Kabbalah is actually God prior to his self-manifestation in the production of any spiritual realm. Okay, let's stop. Ein Sof, the source of light in the high heavens that we draw from, and the spiritual abundance that comes into our godly soul, nefesh elokit, happens to be God. Which form of God? The form of God before he became anything in the spiritual realm that we know. I would call it the OG, right? The original source before anything and everything happened. That's the Ein Sof. Before the Tzimtzum. Very good. It's going to say that as well over here, that this is before the Tzimtzum. I don't want to get into this whole concept of Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is the contraction, what God did in order to create this world, our reality. We'll get to it at the right time. But basically, Or Ein Sof is התגלות והתפשטות מעצמותו יתברך כפי שהוא לפני הצמצום. ברוך שכיוון על my next line. So God, before he went through the process of tzimtzum, loosely explained what is tzimtzum, it's contraction. God, who is everything, created this contraction. He pulled a certain part of his being, of his entity, in order to create the reality of our world and our universe and everything there. But who he is and was before is the Or Ein Sof. So when we do a mitzvah aseh, a positive commandment, the 248 positive commandments, we draw light from that source, from that Ein Sof, and it comes all the way down to our godly soul, nefesh elokit. Okay, I get that. I get Ein Sof. You get Ein Sof? It's not so difficult. Right now we understand it's the original source, right? The Ma'archu, who is the Rav Chaim Vital, who is the student of the Arizal, chimes in on this and says, in case you want to know how things work with your soul, because it says over here nefesh elokit, it says הנשמה שלנו היא רק ענף קטן שמשתלשל מתוך מקור עצום שנקרא שורש הנשמה שנמצא אי שם למעלה ברום העולמות העליונים. He says, since you want to know a little bit about your godly soul, how it works is such. The bigger source of your soul is not here. It's in the heavens. And from the heavens, there's a little branch that comes all the way down to your neshama, and it's connected over here, and you're a fraction of that neshama. And that place up there is called shoresh haneshama, the source of the soul, and it's in the place of the high heavens. It gives a list over here of this and that, where it is. It gives the address. Okay, but even if I tell you the address of where that soul is, we're not Kabbalists to understand, but they let us know what it is. Furthermore, it says, ובתוך הנפש משתלשל ועובר דרך כל העולמות מגלה אצל האדם במוח בסוד הנשמה. And from this source of your soul, it comes all the way down from all the worlds, and it's like still connected. It comes straight to your brain, because that's where your neshama is residing. So invisibly you can't see it, but right now you have like a string that's connected from here to your original source in the Shamayim. I'm going to add something that's not in the book, but something that we learned in previous years. I saw this brought in Shvilei Pinchas, that he talks about שכל הנשמות של עם ישראל חצובות מכיסא הכבוד. It says that all the souls of the Jewish people are carved out from God's holy throne, which basically means that's our source. That's where our neshamot are. So this place that we just spoke about, that's where it is. The bulk of our neshama is under Kisei HaKavod, and that line that comes down all the way over here, the schut that's connected to our neshama, which resides in our brain, or resides in our head, is the connection, is the small fraction from there. And just to back it up, when Jews are united, they're very strong. That's why when Moshe Rabbeinu was going with the back and forth with the angels, what did Hashem tell him? Hold on to the chair and give him an answer. Why? Because he had all the power of all the neshamot of the Jewish soul. He gave him power. Furthermore, we also said, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. So there's also there's a lot of names for Kisei HaKavod. There's a lot of names for this place that we're speaking of tonight. Another name that was given to it is Kol Yisrael. It's actually called Kol Yisrael. And in that place called Kol Yisrael, because you say Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. How could that be? How can Kol Yisrael have a place in Chelek Olam Haba? Right? He says, you know why? Because the larger portion of everybody's soul is there. Also, V'amech kulam tzadikim. Everybody's a tzaddik. How can you make such a general statement? Kulam tzadikim. Of course, kulam tzadikim. Why? Because 95% of your neshama is under Kisei HaKavod. You are. So you're sinning with the 5% that's down here. Okay, clean it up. Give it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way that you want to give it back to. But in reality, the main source of your neshama is over there. And by the way, on Shabbat, when you get the neshama yetera, that extra neshama, where does it come from? It comes from over there. And on Motzei Shabbat, where does it go? It goes back over there. So what happens when you get elevated in your mitzvot? Right? So you're sending up a higher version of the neshama that they gave you at night, and they're like, oh my God, now we have to reciprocate and give him a larger dose of spirituality. So this whole source, you have a source, a reservoir of spirituality waiting for you over there, and you're constantly connected. You're constantly connected, and that's what the Malach was letting us know. That somewhere up high in the heavens, he's vaguely telling us that you're connected to a place where there's a string that comes down to your neshama. I just gave you a few more backgrounds because in previous learnings we've seen this come up. So that's a visual for you. That's a visual for you. And when you perform 248 positive mitzvot, you're drawing the light, you're drawing the spiritual abundance from that place, and it comes down to your nefesh elokit. So, before we did a competition, a standoff, mitzvat aseh versus mitzvat lo ta'aseh, the circumcision versus the removing the part of the skin that has leprosy, and we saw that the Gemara said in this standoff, mitzvat aseh wins. We're going to take a different lens now. We're going to look at it differently. Now that it's a standoff, but now it's different. How is it different? Mitzvat aseh ישנה עוצמה והשפעה חיובית על הנפש הרבה יותר משל לא תעשה. when you perform a mitzvah aseh, it has a bigger impression on you, bigger effect on your soul, than when you perform a negative commandment. Meaning it has more of an effect. If you had a chance, if you want to grow in your spirituality, you probably want to put more focus on aseh. Aseh is what's going to help you grow. All the positive commandments are what's going to help you grow. Even by you refraining, by holding back, by not transgressing on negative commandments, that's not going to give you as much growth as focusing on 248 positive commandments. And if we have to make a complete separation between those two groups of mitzvot, and we want to sort of like define them, damage belongs to the negative commandments. And the loss of spiritual abundance is connected to mitzvot lo taseh. So meaning, if you want to have less spiritual light, less spiritual abundance, that's when you transgress on 248 positive. If you want to damage the soul, that's when you transgress 365. That's another layer of understanding. And this damage that we speak of is very, very noticeable in the higher worlds. A further understanding is what the Zohar brings. As the Baal Tanya says, K'mo shekatuv bezohar kadosh. The Baal Tanya continues to tell us about the 248. He cites the Zohar. K'mo shekatuv bezohar kadosh, deramach pikudin inun, ramach iverin dem malka. He says, just like it's written in the Zohar, that the 248 mitzvot correspond to the 248 organs of the king. Like I said, slow and steady. Slow and steady will get there. בעזרת השם נעשה ונצליח. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהים מלך העולם שהכל יעבוד. Amen. First of all, as if the king's organs, right? The king has no organs. Hashem has no shape, has no form. This is just for us, human beings, to connect the dots and understand. He says over here, just like we have organs in the body that have a power. For example, just like an eye offers us vision, just like an ear offers us hearing, just like a nose offers us smelling, right? We have 248 organs. Each one has a power. Each one has a koach. Similarly, there are 248 powers in the heavens that are called 248 organs of the king. וכל מצווה היא בחינת עבר, and each mitzvah is connected to an organ. And in that organ, it connects, and it connects המשכה מיוחדת מהזכויות הלקיות שייכת לאותה מצווה, ובקיום שלה מגלים וממשיכים אותה הערה למטה. And he says, since there are 248 organs to the king's body, and each one of these organs has a power. Every time that you perform a mitzvah, you activate that power in that organ. And what it does is it reveals and it draws down the spiritual light by performing that mitzvah. And by doing that, you're able to draw down from the upper heavens, from the place called En Sof. And the end result of all this is called Mituk Hadin, the sweetening of the judgment. So to summarize, we have 248 positive commandments. Each one is connected to the 248 organs of the king. Each organ reveals a power. When you perform the mitzvah, you activate the power. When you activate the power, a spiritual light comes from up above. When it comes from up above, it gives you a shefa, a spiritual abundance. And in reality, what it means to you on the day-to-day basis is that it sweetens the judgment on an individual. Performing 248 mitzvot aseh have a direct yield, the result of sweetening the judgment. I'm telling you, this is so deep. If you like, I'm trying to put the Lego blocks together and build something, and I'm getting there. I'm trying not to lose because it's 248 of this and 248 of this and 248 of that. I want to know what it means to me at the end of the day. At the end of the day is that you're finding out the power tools, you're finding out the channels, you're finding the conduits of how to interact with God, how to bring something from up above down low, and to win this life. That's what's happening over here. It's a lot of mystical jargon, but at the end of the day, they're teaching us how to win life. Our focus tonight is the 248 positive. 248 positive have the power to activate spiritual powers from up above, from the place Ein Sof, that helps us sweeten the judgment in our life. Why is this so necessary? Because we're humans, and humans make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, you have to pay the price. When you pay the price, it's a punishment. Nobody likes to get punished. Since there's going to be a cost for your sins, Hashem says, let me help you out. Let me sweeten the judgment. There will be judgment. Hashem is emet. There's going to be a judgment. But if there's going to be a judgment, let it be a sweet judgment. 248 positive commandments increase positive judgment into your life, which is a good thing. There's a whole concept over here of Orach Chaim HaKadosh, how he brings that certain things are revealed, certain things are concealed. That even within the word of mitzvah and God's name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the name of Chesed, it's hinted to it. I'm going to run it through one time. I'm not going to repeat it. You get it, you get it. You don't get it, we're moving on. There is a code there's several codes of how you can work with the Torah. One of the codes is called Atbash. Atbash is I can send you a whole paragraph with a bunch of letters that mean nothing. But if I tell you how to decipher the code, you'll see I wrote everything for you, perfectly. Atbash is one of those codes. The Torah, there's things deeply hidden in the Torah that if you apply the Atbash decoding code, you'll reveal secrets. How does Atbash work? Aleph gets replaced with Taf. Shin gets replaced with Bet, meaning the last letter and the first letter. The second to last letter to the second letter. And so on and so forth until eventually they meet in the middle. Right? It's called the system of Atbash. So if you take the word mitzvah and I apply mem and tzadik to Atbash, mem is actually yud and tzadik is actually hey. What is that? Who cares, right? What does that have to do with anything? So Orach Chaim HaKadosh tells us, it comes to show us that God's name of kindness is Yud Kei Vav Kei. And if you go to Yud Kei in Atbash, it gives us the words Mem and Tzadik. What's the Mem and Tzadik? It's the first letters of mitzvah. Why? Because when you do God's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, when you do the word mitzvah, what's the last two letters of mitzvah? Vav Hei, right? That's God's name, right? God's name is Vav Hei also. Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? So since we have Vav Hei in both words, mitzvah and Yud Kei Vav Kei have the ending is the same, right? But the Mem Tzadik of mitzvah and the Yud K of Yud K Vav K are actually the same thing in Adbash. Why does it come to show us? Hashem has come to show us that when it comes to mitzvah, the 248 mitzvot aseh, it's concealed. That you see that there's judgment, but according to Adbash, the judgment is what? I'm sweetening the judgment. There's a judgment there, but it's concealed. That's what sweetening the judgment does. There's going to be a judgment, but Hashem is going to sweeten it according to our service. I don't want to take it further than that. The Gemara states, remember the Zohar told us that the 248 mitzvot are corresponding to the 248 organs of the king. The Gemara tells us something completely different. In Masechet Makot, on the 23rd page on the second side, it says, Ramach mitzvot aseh hen keneged remach ivarim shel ha'adam. He said, the Gemara says, no, the 248 mitzvot, positive commandments, each mitzvah corresponds to an organ in the human body. So, if somebody is sick, or there's some sort of an ailment in a part of the body, you should know that's connected to one of the 248 mitzvot that you're not performing properly. As a matter of fact, the body is telling you there's something wrong with the soul. The body and the soul work together. It's a team. They don't always get along. But when they do get along, it's a great thing. But when they don't get along, they still have to communicate with one another. So when a person has some sort of a physical ailment or a body part that's hurting him or he's sick with, he should know that it's connected to a mitzvah. And if a person fixes that mitzvah, he can fix that sickness. You're immediately going to ask me, do you have that book that connects the body part to the mitzvah?
It is mentioned that the Shema has 248 words.
Each letter.
It's supposed to be said with precise meditation in order to bring down light to each of the body parts of the...
Correct. And they say a person who's not careful on each letter, then that letter that corresponds to that body part hurts from it.
Is that why with the mezuzot also it affects certain things, also health or shalom bayit?
100% when letters are missing. Over there as well. The Arizal talks about it as well. And if you remember in the Tefillah class, we spoke about the pt3, I believe. I saw a very ancient book that connects all 248 to the organs. It's written in Rashi. I downloaded it. I need to print it and to read it, but the concept is there. We have some insight. If you look over here, if you look over there, if you look over here, you'll find some things. But we see that 248 is connected to, according to the Gemara, Masechet Makot, on the 23rd page on the second side, Sheremach mitzvot aseh hem keneged remach ivarim shel ha'adam. 248 positive commandments are corresponding to 248 organs of the human body. So every single mitzvah has either a positive or a negative effect towards the organ of the human being. Furthermore, that's why every single person has to sanctify his organs and not do anything that is against the will of God. And here, the Baal Tanya gives us the end of tonight's lesson, and it says, כמו שכתוב בזוהר, רמ"ח פיקודין עינון רמ"ח איברים למלכה, just like it's mentioned in the Zohar that the 248 mitzvot are like the 248 organs of the king. כמו שכתוב, כמו שאומרים, וגם על נפשו האלוקית, and also on his godly soul, כמו שכתוב, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו. This is why we say the words, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו. This is what we say, that Hashem sanctifies us with his mitzvot. What does this mean? So, we know that nafsho elokit. We know that we have the godly soul inside of us. And if you ever want to imagine this, it's like, you can imagine that God is this great ball of light. Again, use very, very rudimentary examples. And from this huge source of life, Hashem takes small little pieces called neshamot. And you get one, and you get one, and you get one, and you get one, and everybody gets a little piece of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the life source. And that's why it's called Nefesh Elokit, godly soul. Because there's a godly spark inside of you. And that's why you should respect other people, because of the godly spark that's in them. That's your children, that's strangers, that's even Gentiles. They also have a godly spark in them. Us as Jews, we have certain extra pieces, Nefesh Behemit, Nefesh Elokit, and then we have the 5 other parts that are offered to us in order to elevate ourselves spiritually. The Naranchi, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida, all the 5 parts. The Goyim don't have that. Nonetheless, since this godly spark is inside of us, that means everybody in here has a little bit of God in him. So you have to respect them, and you also have to understand. It's almost like, back in the days when I was really trying to understand spirituality, I would look at when I was in New York in the subway, I was like, so is that God right now? That homeless guy on the street? Like right now, is that God going through the experience of a hobo? And then I would look over there, is that God over there, playing the saxophone? And then I would look at my friend, is that God also over here experiencing himself as a Jew from Israel that now lives in America? And then I would look at the rabbi, I was like, well, is this God experiencing himself as a tzaddik, as the ultimate Jew, learning Torah? And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, the Nefesh Elokit is everybody. So you get to respect everybody. And that's why you see that the rabbis, they treat everybody, every single person why? Because they don't see the suit, they see the neshama that's inside. It also makes you a mensch. You can't become disgusting and ugly and disrespectful to people. Because who are you doing? You're disrespecting God. Even back in the days, I remember, when you realize that this is not your world, right? It's God's world, right? We're guests. Right? In my younger years, maybe I wouldn't have a problem throwing a wrapper outside the window. Whatever, it's outside, it's garbage, right? But when you understand, what do I mean? It's God's house. I'm throwing garbage in God's house. Would somebody come into my house and throw garbage on the floor? I'd be okay with that? No. So I'm in God's house. This is His house. This is His world. I'm going to go and dirty it? Of course not. I'll never forget. There was one time a guy wearing a kippah, driving a Mustang, and we're at a light, and he takes off. And when he takes off, when somebody throws a whole meal outside the window, and you see the cup and the thing there, it's like, what cup? And I'm sorry, what Mustang? That was in a Porsche. Well-to-do. It bothered me so much. What chilul Hashem, right? To see something like that. And not only that, you're wearing a kippah. You don't want to dirty your Porsche? I remember I pulled up to him, and I hung down with him. Why are you dirtying Hashem's world? Why would you do that? That's so disrespectful to God's world. You know what he said? You're right. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. He didn't fight back. He said, you're right. Maybe just to quiet me down, or maybe he did have some sort of epiphany, but it's so disgusting. Why? Because it's all Hashem. It's all Hashem. Nefesh Elokit. So when we say, Kmo Shomim Asher Kideshanu B'mitzvotav, Asher Kideshanu B'mitzvotav. So the whole class, what are we talking about? 248 mitzvot. What kind of mitzvot? Positive mitzvot. What happens when you perform them? You become holy. Asher Kideshanu B'mitzvotav. He sanctifies us. He makes us more holy, more light, more shefa comes down when we perform the positive commandment. Asher Kideshanu B'mitzvotav. We say it 100, thousands of times, and we don't understand it. Asher Kideshanu B'mitzvotav, that He sanctifies, He makes us holy with His mitzvot. How? We just learned the mechanics. We know exactly how. When we perform the 248 positive commandments, we tap into Ein Sof. Ein Sof brings this light down from all the different worlds straight down to where? To our neshama that's right here, but a string that's connected to it. And the 248 mitzvot, they bring shefa, they bring spiritual abundance into a person. And when a person transgresses, his spiritual abundance contracts. 365, totally different program. The 365 don't sanctify. The 365 damage the soul, damage olamot, they damage worlds in the heavens, they damage the person's neshama, they're destructive, the ramifications of mitzvah lo ta'aseh. So we see that it's very good for a person to concentrate on mitzvah aseh in order to understand shasher kiddushan b'mitzvotav. I want to conclude with one last thing. So, in the book B'tzur Yarom, which is written by, it's the commentary on the Tanya from Rav Yora Michael Abedjeh, Zecher Tzadik Libracha. There's an additional commentary called Sidna Da'ara, which is the commentary of his son, Rav Yisrael Abedjeh, which most people know already in the group. This is from his commentary. He did a tremendous job in giving us a visual of what happens when you're transgressing. When you're performing mitzvot aseh and mitzvot lo ta'aseh, and when you're not performing mitzvot aseh and lo ta'aseh, what does it look like in the Shamayim? And I want to read it to you. And I also summarize it here in English. Yes, and with this we'll conclude. He says there's 613 mitzvot, biblical obligations, deoraita. And we also have 7 rabbinical. And altogether there's 620 mitzvot. Now, these 620 mitzvot are 620 ways, 620 opportunities, 620 different ways of HaMetzaveh, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to reveal himself to the Metzuveh, to the Adam. How? Hashem reveals himself to the individual through the performance of the mitzvot, of the 613 Doraita and 7 Derabanan. Here is the mechanics of how that works. Remember the negative commandments? What's their number? 365. Apparently, there are 365 chinorot, pipelines, that bring down the shefa, the spiritual abundance from the high heavens. So right now, let's get that visual. 365 pipelines, and 365 pipes, and all the spiritual abundance comes down through these pipes. Okay? כאשר היצירה ושמירת השימוש שלהם היא באמצעות שמירה הלא תעשה דרך 3 לבושי נפשו, מחשבה, דיבור ומעשה. These 365 pipelines that bring down spiritual abundance from the upper worlds, from the heavens, from the Or and Sof, you know how you protect those pipelines to be working pipelines? By not performing, by protecting yourself to not transgress on 365 negative commandments in 3 ways. Machshava, dibur, u'maaseh. You protect your thought, you protect your speech, and you protect your action. And if a person is not careful with his thought, with his speech, and his action on the 365 negative commandments, every time he's not careful with it, he pops a hole in one of the pipelines. You start to stab the pipe with a knife, and you start creating holes. Every time a person sins on 365 negative by thought, speech, and action, it's as if he takes a knife to the pipe and creates holes. But if he does protect it, then the 365 pipelines stay whole and they can draw down. When you perform 248 positive commandments, the spiritual abundance we've been talking about all night actually comes down through this 365 pipelines. So the Shefa of the 248 comes through this 365. However, what happens when somebody transgresses on 248 of the positive commandment? That Shefa that's supposed to come down from those pipelines seeps through those holes. And guess who's waiting for that spiritual abundance that's not coming down to you? Because there's a break in the pipe is broken, it's coming out. The Sitra Acha is right there to collect it, and you've just empowered the dark side. And all of a sudden you see that the damage to that person's soul is many times over. So to summarize, we took a deeper look into the 248 positive commandments. Their power is to draw down spiritual energy from a place called Ensof all the way down to our neshama over here, because they're connected. The upper worlds and our neshama is connected with a string. Our performance of the mitzvot of 248 positive commandments draws spiritual abundance and we're able to grow. 365 negative are negative commandments that damage the soul and damage the upper worlds. When this spiritual abundance comes down, it comes down through 365 pipes. Those 365 pipes get protected and stay whole when somebody is careful with the 365 negative commandments by thought, speech, and action. The minute the person is not careful with his thought, speech, and action with the negative commandments, every time he transgresses, he creates a hole in the pipeline. That hole in the pipeline is the pipeline that all the spiritual abundance comes down from the upper worlds, including your 248 positive commandments. So when you're doing something from the performing a mitzvah of 248 positive commandments, and the shefa comes down, and you're waiting to get spiritually elevated, and it's not happening. Why? Because all the shefa is coming down from the holes that were created from the transgression, and also all that spiritual abundance, it has to come down. It has to go somewhere. If it doesn't come to you, it goes to the other side, to the Sitra Acha. And that was the two lines of the Tanya tonight. Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll move forward at the same pace in the next few weeks, and we'll get a deeper understanding of what the Rav wants to tell us. But again, I'm usually, I'm usually good at selling Torah. Like good Emunah class, good Parsha class, good Rosh Chodesh class, holiday classes. Oh, that's my bread and butter. That's what I do. This is new to me. And the classes might not be as exciting as some of the other ones. And they're very thought-provoking, and you got to hold on. And then sometimes I'm repetitive because I want you guys to press reset and understand. But I promise you this, I'm pretty sure. I don't make promises. Be'ezrat Hashem, Yirtzeh Hashem. If we hold on tight and we grab this, and we know the mechanics of how things work in the heavens, we'll have such a different service. Our connection to Hashem will be so different, and you'll be mamash more mature and more intellectual and more connected than the run-of-the-mill Jew that's running around. That it's just about kiddush on Friday night and it's a family gathering on the Chagim. This is considered learning. Right now, mamash, we are learning. So Shechem Yisrael, for the time that you're putting in, these high-level Torah concepts that you're trying to absorb, and you should know that there's a concept of la'amol b'Torah, da'amal. What's da'amal? Just trying to understand, you get reward. Meaning, even if you walk out of here after an hour knowing zilch, Hashem gives you full pay, full credit. If you're able to be over here and, learn and understand, then it's a gift, because not only are you getting the full credit for the amal, but you're also getting to understand. And there's Hashem, like the mashal that we learned in the first class. This is the the elixir. This is the cure-all to the sickly generation of Ikvita de Mashiach. This is the Torah that we need to learn. This is the Torah that we need to have inside of us in order to be able to cope with today's day and age. The beginning of the Tanya is incredible. Maybe at one point we'll do proper Tanya, even though we were tagged to do IGERET TESHUVAH, but nevertheless the lessons are there, the explanations are there. But Be'ezrat Hashem, that the merit of the words, the letters, the concepts, Rav Shneur Zalman Miladi Zatzal, the merit of Rav Yisrael Abedzel Shlita that encouraged us to learn it, and in the merit of Rav Yoram Michael Abedzel Zchotot Hagen Alenu Amen, that we should all see Besorot Tovot, and we have Yeshuot, Brachot, Atzlacha, Refuah Shlema, Zivugim Agunim, Parnasa B'Shefa, Bercha B'Atzlacha, and what we do in the merit of this hardcore learning that we're doing.
Amen.
Kol Tov.